In the frozen silence of the Arctic, a decades-old order is stirring back to life. Denmark has confirmed the existence of a chilling military rule dating back to 1952, a rule that leaves no room for hesitation. If Greenland is invaded, Danish soldiers are required to shoot first and ask questions later. No approval, no waiting for commands, no time for diplomacy. The order is clear. Immediately counterattack invading forces even if commanders are unaware that war has begun. The Danish Defense Ministry says the rule remains fully enforced today, and this revelation comes at a moment of extraordinary tension. This week, U.S. President Donald Trump once again declared his intention to annex Greenland, a NATO territory, calling the Arctic island essential to American national security. He did not rule out military force.
We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
The reaction across Europe has been swift and stunned. Denmark insists Greenland is not for sale. Greenland's own government has rejected the idea outright, and within NATO, alarm bells are ringing.
Firstly, I believe that the U.S. president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That is, including our NATO, and thus the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War. I do everything I can for the opposite. I believe in democracy, and I believe in the international rules of the game. Of course, I also believe that you do not change borders by force, either in one way or another. It is not only the position of Denmark and the Danish realm. Fortunately, Europe has too, so I hope that people will also take note of the once again significant European support that we are receiving. I agree that it is important that there is security and peace and security in the Arctic region. That is one of the reasons why we are in NATO. Greenland is also a member of NATO. It is a shared responsibility of the Arctic states, including the Kingdom, to ensure that there is security, peace, and freedom in the Arctic region. But Denmark has always been a good ally of the United States. We want to continue to be so. But I also have to address that some of what is being said from the American side, and of course we will not accept a situation where we and Greenland are threatened in this way.
Because if the United States were to attack Greenland, it would mean something unthinkable, one NATO member turning its weapons on another. European leaders are now holding urgent talks. France says it wants to act, but only together with its European partners. Germany confirms it is working closely with Denmark and other allies on what comes next. Britain says the future of Greenland belongs to its citizens and the Kingdom of Denmark.
Well, let me be really clear about Greenland. The future of Greenland is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. Denmark is a close European ally, a close NATO ally. Well, I'd stand with her.
Okay.
And she's right about the future of Greenland.
Behind closed doors, the tone has shifted. According to European diplomats, discussions of a U.S. takeover are no longer theoretical. They are being treated as a concrete possibility. Publicly, Washington sends mixed signals. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has assured allies that an invasion is not planned, saying the goal remains to buy Greenland. He reportedly told U.S. lawmakers that military threats do not signal imminent action.
Does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Can you clarify your comments to lawmakers this week?
Well, that's always been the president's intent from the very beginning. He said it very early on. I mean, this is not new. He talked about it in his first term, and he's not the first U.S. president that has examined or looked at how could we acquire Greenland. There's an interest there. But so I just reminded them of the fact that not only did Truman want to do it, but President Trump's been talking about this since his first term.
The administration really willing to risk the NATO alliance by potentially moving ahead with military operations?
What I think the White House said yesterday is what I will tell you now, and I've always said. The president always retained the option. Every president, not this president, every president always retains the option. I'm not talking about Greenland. I'm just talking about globally. If the president identifies a threat to the national security of the United States, every president retains the option to address it through military means. As a diplomat, which is what I am now, and what we work on, we always prefer to settle it in different ways. That included in Venezuela.
What is on Denmark, sir? Mr. Secretary, on Denmark. Why has the administration not taken Denmark's offer to discuss the situation in Greenland? And
well, I'll be meeting with them next week.
But will you take military intervention off the table?
I'm not here to talk about Denmark or military intervention. I'll be meeting with them next week. We'll have those conversations with them then. But I'm not having anything further to add to that today.
But those reassurances clash with comments from the White House. President Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, warned Wednesday that military force is always an option.
Also been reports that the U.S. could potentially buy Greenland as one potential option on the table. What would such an offer look like? Is there anything monetarily you could provide, any details there?
Well, that's something that's currently being actively discussed by the president and his national security team. And I would point out that the acquisition of Greenland by the United States is not a new idea. This is something that presidents dating back to the 1800s have said is advantageous for America's national security. The president has been very open and clear with all of you and with the world that he views it in the best interest of the United States to deter Russian and Chinese aggression in the Arctic region. And so that's why his team is currently talking about what a potential purchase would look like.
Caroline.
Jackie.
Caroline, just following up on Greenland, why not rule out taking it by military force?
I know that past presidents and past leaders have often ruled things out. They've often been very open about ruling things in and basically broadcasting their foreign policy strategy to the rest of the world, not just to our allies, but most egregiously to our adversaries. That's not something this president does. All options are always on the table for President Trump as he examines what's in the best interests of the United States. But I will just say that the president's first option always has been diplomacy.
The Danes have repeatedly said they are willing to collaborate on all of the concerns that the president has, whether it's more troops, mineral rights, intelligence sharing. Why does the president feel he needs to own Greenland and not and put out the threat of military action when this could be done through diplomacy?
Well, who said diplomacy isn't taking place behind the scenes, Dasha? I mean, the president is interested in diplomacy. His national security team is as well. And of course, he's always willing to pick up the phone for everybody and hear out their concerns. But the president is the president of the United States of America, and he's always going to be very clear about what he views as being in our nation's best interest.
We can house personnel on the island. The U.S. has control of landings, takeoffs, anchorages, etc. So I'm curious if you could just spell out for the American public what specifically would the U.S. gain by taking control of Greenland that the U.S. doesn't already have access to right now?
More control over the Arctic region and ensuring that China and Russia and our adversaries cannot continue their aggression in this very important and strategic region. And there would be many other benefits as well that, again, the president and his national security team are currently talking about.
I remember asking the president at the very beginning of his term if he was committed to Article 5 and NATO, and he said yes. Has his stance on NATO or his commitment to NATO changed?
Did you see his statement earlier today? He said we will always be there for NATO even if they are not there for us, and I think that answers your question directly. Yes.
Just to follow up on what Jeff was saying there, will the president commit that if any NATO members are attacked, the United States will come to it?
Again, the president addressed this directly himself this morning after seeing the coverage from all of you in this room on television, and he made it very clear we're always going to be there for NATO, even if they have not done right by the United States of America, and they have not. They have finally increased their defense spending at the request of this president, but it was only because of this president that they did that.
The contradictions have only deepened Europe's unease. Britain's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, raised the issue directly with Trump in a phone call as European unity is tested like never before. And the warnings are growing darker. Former French Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin has issued a stark message. If the U.S. invades Greenland, it would become an enemy of Europe. No case should Europe accept damage to its sovereignty, he said. A NATO member attacking another, he warned, would be unprecedented, a historic rupture. In the icy north, old rules stand ready, alliances tremble, and the world watches, wondering how close the unthinkable really is.